This is Kira Johnson reporting for CFN News. Today starts our 4-part informational segment on GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. First, we'll be discussing GMOs with Dr. Morgan Santalucia, a world-renowned geneticist. For our first installment on genetically modified organisms, I'm here with Morgan Santalucia, a world-renowned geneticist. Now Morgan, what can you tell us about how GMOs are made?
Well, genetically modified foods are typically made through a combination of traditional breeding and genetic engineering.
Traditional breeding is probably the method most people are familiar with. It involves repeatedly cross-pollinating plants to select for certain desired characteristics until the desired offspring is produced. On the other hand, genetic engineering is slightly more complicated. First, organisms in nature are observed for particular traits that would be advantageous for foods, such as the ability to resist insects. Next, the genome of the organism with this trait is analyzed and compared with the genome from the same species that doesn't have the trait. Genomes of different species with the same trait could also be analyzed and compared. Researchers often use the knockout method, where parts of the genome of interest are deleted until the trait is lost. These methods give researchers the ability to determine the specific gene or genes that are responsible for creating the desirable trait. Then, the gene of interest must be inserted into the genome of the plant that is to be grown. This is usually done in one of two ways. Scientists can cover small pieces of metal, usually gold, with the desired gene and then use a gene gun to shoot them into the plant tissue. Or, the gene can be inserted into a plasmid, which is a circular molecule of DNA. This can be done by using restriction enzymes to cut out the gene from the donor DNA and also make a cut through the plasmid DNA. Then, the enzyme ligase is used to join the ends of the gene with the cut ends of the plasmid, making a new plasmid with the gene of interest. This plasmid can be placed into naturally invasive bacteria by shocking the cell so that it is forced to take up the plasmid. This bacteria can then be allowed to contact the plant seeds, where it will invade and insert its altered DNA into the plant. Once the gene has been inserted using one of these two methods, the plant is made to reproduce in a controlled setting so that researchers can analyze the genomes and physical characteristics of the offspring to make sure that only plants with the desired trait are produced.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Be sure to join us next week as we interview local NC State students to see what they think about GMOs. Hello, this is Kira Johnson reporting for CFN News. Today I'm continuing my series on GMOs. And today I'm going to gain some insight as to what students at North Carolina State think about consuming them. Here with me today I have Alex to share her concerns about GMOs, as well as geneticist Morgan to share her own scientific perspective. Here with me I have Alex, a junior studying molecular biology. Alex, what are your concerns about consuming GMOs?
Hello, I'm a student here at NC State and I've always been concerned about my health. Lately I've been hearing a lot of talk on the news about how if your food has GMOs, your body will become immune to antibiotics and you'll get sick easier. Is that true?
Yes, that is actually a concern that many people may have, but is an incorrect assumption. There are research studies being conducted to include GMOs in food that will pack more nutrients and deliver disease resistance. However, this type of GMO is not in the foods we eat because the FDA requires food with genetically engineered plants to be safe and not affect the integrity of the item. The research on using GMOs to deliver more nutrients and disease resistance is targeted at ready-to-use foods for disaster relief efforts in developing countries where malnutrition and illness is a concern.
That's actually pretty interesting. I still don't know that I'd want to consume the GMOs with antibiotic resistance. You just don't know the long-term effects.
Next with me I have Adam, a senior in mechanical engineering, who's here to share his concerns about GMOs in crops. Adam, what are your concerns?
I'm concerned that increasing the amount of GMOs in our crops will also increase the amount of pesticide and herbicide use, which could be harmful for the environment.
Using GMOs in crops doesn't necessarily mean herbicide usage will increase. It could, however, lead to hybrid strains of, let's say, weeds and other plants growing around the production crop. There is research being done on the ability to add pesticide and herbicide properties to crops, and this would actually be beneficial to the environment by cutting down the use of chemicals on crops.
That's neat. Being able to have crops that are already immune to pests might be beneficial. However, there is still the issue of building up immunity and potentially needing to use pesticides again. And then also, like you said, creating hybrid crops that need more herbicide, pesticide, and chemicals.
Next with me I have Ryan, who's a senior in electrical engineering, to share his opinion on GMOs. Ryan, how do you feel about using GMOs in our food?
I am against GMO usage in foods simply because we have no idea what the long-term effects of them will be. It is also hard to do risk evaluation on foods with GMOs compared to foods without GMOs. I think it's hard to say right now if GMOs are completely safe because we don't know the long-term effects of them.
You're right. There are a lot of unknown variables when determining long-term effects of GMOs in crops.
Exactly. I think guidelines for producers should be established and changed alongside GMO development in order to be as cautious as we can. Better safe than sorry.
You're exactly right. There are many great benefits of GMOs, which is why they're being used so widely, but we should be conscientious of potential negative effects and take any precautions we can to avoid them.
So far in our program, we have discussed what GMOs are and how they are viewed by scientific experts and the general public. Now let's see how they are regulated. Currently, GMOs are regulated by 3 governmental agencies, the FDA, EPA, and APHIS. The FDA looks primarily at the foods and drugs that are produced using GMOs, while the EPA focuses on GMO microorganisms and pesticides, and APHIS focuses on the transport of GMOs. As we heard earlier from members of the public, there is a concern about the safety of GMO food products. Officially, the FDA considers GM food products, such as produce, to be generally recognized as safe, and therefore does not require additional pre-approval. However, food additives or drugs that are synthesized from GMOs must be tested, licensed, and approved by the FDA before they are put on the market to ensure that they are safe and effective for their intended use. Since there has been some controversy surrounding the consumption of GMOs, people may be surprised to hear that as of 2014, 94% of soybeans, 91% of cotton, and 90% of corn grown in the U.S. are genetically modified, because manufacturers are currently not required to label their products as genetically modified or as containing GMOs. However, the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard Act, which Congress passed on July 29, 2016, mandates that by July 29, 2018, the USDA must have implemented standards that require companies to clearly label products that contain GMOs. Now here to walk us through this process is Sarah Nile from the USDA's Agricultural and Marketing Services. Thank you for being here today, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
And can you walk us through where the USDA is in the process of enacting the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard Act?
Of course. The NBFDSA is fairly vague in how it discusses the end goal of requiring GM foods to be labeled. We just ended a period in which we've taken input from stakeholders such as lobbyists and businesses, and in the next few months we'll be taking into consideration the views of the public. Some of the issues that we're currently grappling with include the formation of different categories of disclosure for GM foods, products with GM ingredients, or products with ingredients derived from GM crops or animals.
And how can members of the public get involved in this discussion?
Interested parties should email GMO labeling at ams.usda.gov with comments or questions, and our frequently asked questions webpage is updated regularly.
Thank you, Ms. Nile.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that concludes our segment for tonight. Be sure to join us next week as we interview Abigail Hiley, a local North Carolina farmer who grows genetically modified corn. Tonight, I'm here with Abigail Hiley, a local North Carolina corn farmer, to discuss GMOs and how they've affected her and her business. Abigail, thank you for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure to be here today.
So when did you first hear about GMOs, and what did you originally think?
Well, I heard of the Flavor Saver tomato first. It was a genetically modified tomato that allowed tomatoes ripened on the vine to be shipped instead of green tomatoes being picked that were shipped and artificially ripened later. I thought it was a really good idea. It took some of the trickier processing components out of the equation. Overall, it did lead to them having lower production costs and to be able to sell it at a lower price. But it didn't really last.
What do you mean it didn't last?
Well, GMOs weren't really known about at that time. Because there wasn't a health risk or a nutritional difference, they were not labeled any differently. When people found out that they were genetically modified, they simply stopped buying them without doing research.
And wouldn't that prevent you or want you to stop using GMOs?
You would think, but now labeling of GMO foods is required. Also, the crop I grow, corn, is sold as components of animal feed a lot. Animals don't really care if it's GMO or not, so I have a bit of a stable customer there.
And how is your corn genetically modified?
I grow BT corn. This comes from genes in a naturally occurring soil bacterium that serves as an insecticide, and it's really beneficial for me.
And how's it beneficial?
But now I don't have to buy pesticides for my crops. They already have it built in. Because of that, less plants of mine die, and that means I can sell more. GMOs have done nothing but help me.
That's good news.
Abigail, thank you for your insights.
No problem.
Not only are local farmers seeing benefits from GMOs, but farmers around the world are seeing a lower use of pesticides, a higher crop yield, and overall a greater profit. The use of BT cotton in China has significantly lowered their use of pesticides. In India, BT cotton may have an 80% higher yield than non-BT cotton. Use of HT or herbicide-tolerant soybeans have contributed to a $3.25 billion collective increase of farmer income in 2015. Despite all of the benefits seen, its negative image in society continues to limit its success. But there are good alternatives to GMO foods. BioDirect, a product of Monsanto, is still a form of GMO, but instead of genes being added to the plant, genes and pests are turned off, leading to their death through RNA interference. This technology is still developing before this can be released commercially. Another alternative is Bright Farms. Bright Farms is a company that develops 56,000 to 160,000 square foot greenhouses. Hydroponics allow for the plant's environment to be better controlled, leading to higher yields. Also, physical land isn't used for plant nutrients, and crops can be grown year-round. Bright Farms is already selling their products to stores, including Giant and McCaffrey's. Currently, they do not sell to any stores in North Carolina, but as they continue to expand, this may change. Thank you for tuning into my series on GMOs. I hope this will help you spark informed conversation about GMOs in our food. Special thanks to all of our program guests who helped inform us on their areas of expertise related to GMOs. Next, I have Coda, a recent graduate of the Developmental Training School. Coda, what do you think about GMO usage in our foods?